It's a Microsoft program.
I'm on a Microsoft computer, so.
That's why.
So Andy, do you remember when I kept telling you that we were talking about businesses? I said
Hey,
Poke
Scott.
Place.
Yeah,
Esther.
really.
Oh, we are live. Okay.
I
Gonna
got
call
tonight.
the regular meeting of Wednesday, April 28th, 2021 of the Economic Development Commission meeting to order. Linda Jeske, can you do roll call, please?
Yeah, I think it's me.
It is Sue.
Yes, Sue. Okay, Sue. Can you do roll call, please?
Paul Burnham,
Here.
David Marsh, Linda Jeske,
Here.
Louise Neary,
Here.
Scott Kelly,
Here.
Sue Burnham here, Joe Kennedy, Bill Jodis,
Here.
Jim Murray,
Jim is here. He was here.
He's muted right now.
you want me to wait for him to unmute?
No, I mean, he is present. He just can't talk to us.
Okay, Edwina Futner. Economic Development Consultant Matt Galligan. Assistant Town Manager Scott Roberts. Mayor Paterna.
Here.
Okay, let's see, alternate Mindy Lewis,
Here.
Victor,
Here.
Wayne Kilburn, Robert Burns.
Here.
You don't have that mute on, do you?
No, I had it on mute.
Well, hit it.
Good, Paul.
Okay. Victor, can you sit for David Marsh?
Yes, I can.
Mindy, can you sit for Joe Kennedy?
Yes.
And Robert, can you sit for Edwina Footner?
Sure.
Okay. All right. Okay. Michael, if you would bring Karen Wagner into our meeting, I'd appreciate it. So tonight we're gonna have a special presentation by Karen Wagner. She's the chairperson of the Mass Transit Highway Advisory Commission. She wants to talk a little bit about the needs for reliable local bus transportation and how the Economic Development Commission can be part of that.
Okay, my turn.
Okay, hi Karen.
Hi.
Sure. If you would like, if you'd like to start, go ahead and tell us a little bit about what you're looking for from us.
Okay, well, I am the chairman of the Mass Transit and Highway Advisory Commission. And for the past couple of years, we've been working on a project that's been called the trolley or the intra-town bus, or it goes by all kinds of names. Every time we drop more of the plan, we change the name. But the point of it is to have a bus that runs around town and kind of fills in the gaps of the CT transit route, which actually may even get shorter because they're talking about eliminating some stops, but I think that's all on hold right now. Anyway, the idea is to reach a little bit into the neighborhoods and eventually, as this becomes more and more viable, to reach into even more neighborhoods, at least on the main street, so that people can take the bus to places like the town center and Geisler's and Mexicali Grill, the brewery, and also to work, because now we have all of these places along Sullivan Avenue that people can't reach by bus. And a lot of people who work at FedEx and other places like that, they don't drive a car. So they end up taking a bus to Route 5 and walking a couple miles down. So that's one of the ways it got started. However, we've tried gauging the interest of the businesses and the community for this kind of service, and we've done a lot of unscientific surveys, like we've included a survey in some of the town mailings. We've passed out surveys at the senior center. We sent them through the chamber, and we talked to people at various town events where we have a little table. So what we discovered with these anecdotal surveys is that, about 50% of the people said they would be interested in using a bus. And the employers, for the most part, say this would help us to hire people who live in South Windsor instead of Windsor or Hartford or even Bloomfield. The assisted living places have told me that they think there would be less turnover in their staff. And this is like only three facilities, but it's what we could get here in our interviews. And they've told us that if their employees lived in South Windsor, they think they'd be more likely to stay because, it's a local job. It has some appeal to work where you live. Whereas if you get somebody from Hartford, they may decide that they get a better offer somewhere else, and after 6 months they leave. So this is a constant problem for them. But the fact is that a lot of those people just, their wages are so low that they don't have cars. So you can get there on the bus from Hartford, but you cannot get there on the bus from Rice Street. Anyway, that's where we are. And we've been trying to apply for some grants. And one of the questions that comes up a lot is, what is the economic development impact of this? So what I wanted to know from your commission was, have you any sense of whether something like this makes sense for our town? Has anybody had a business come in and discuss some kind of development vision that they say is missing the one element of public transportation? And do you have conversations with developers where they say it would be a plus if there was a bus stop where their facility is? Basically, have you heard anything that might give us a sense of whether this is needed as much as the surveys indicate?
So what kind of, so when you say a bus, are you talking about something separate from the Connecticut Transit bus, something more of a local bus company doing it? What are you thinking on that?
Yes, actually, it's too bad Matt's not here because he developed a good starting starting place for this, which he called the Whopping Trolley. And he and Mike Gannick developed a plan, including, where the revenues would come from, what the hours of operation would be, and what the cost would be. So what he and his staff were thinking, this is a couple of years ago, was that this bus would run up and down the main business areas of town and try to connect them to some of the neighborhoods. So mostly it would be Sullivan Avenue and crossing over into the CT Transit area to some extent because of Evergreen Walk. And now one time Evergreen Walk did not want any kind of a bus going inside their property, but now they're kind of changing. At least we've heard some suggestion of that. We haven't had a formal statement from them that this would be a good idea, but and then we've got Costco coming in, and who knows what else. But I mean, you all know better than anyone how much the business areas are developing here. So what we're talking about is hopefully a 7-day a week kind of a schedule. Just a small little mini bus, maybe 15 people or 20 people. So that seems to be the standard passenger size. And the way Matt was envisioning was to use the drivers that drive the senior center buses, who apparently are mostly part-time. And his thinking was that they would appreciate having work to add on to that. And then that way the town could handle anything that involves the employees. Now, another approach that they were also discussing was just hiring a service like Post Road Stages or something like that, and let them run the bus. Lindsay Limousine, I think, did one for West Hartford for a while. So yeah, it would be the main point of this bus would be that it would be on a schedule, so it would be reliable. It would stop where you expect it to stop within a couple minutes of the expected time all day long. So that makes it different than from the senior bus. So even the seniors would appreciate it. And we have gotten really good responses from seniors about wanting a bus that they could just take whenever they felt like it. And the revenues would come from fares and also from advertising, because supposedly the businesses that are on this route would like to advertise that this is a place you could stop and shop. And the medical facilities that are all over the place now could also advertise. And then of course we get sponsorships. And what we've found with our research is that any of these kinds of bus projects can get sponsorships even from businesses that aren't in our community. Like, for instance, the casinos. The casinos often will advertise on these little runabout town buses because people are sitting on the bus and they're reading what, and they're thinking, oh, geez, I'd like to go to the casino tomorrow. I mean, it makes sense, really. So there's more sponsorship out there than we may think. But that's the idea. Just covering the basic business areas and hopefully expanding a little bit more into the neighborhoods as we go along, and trying to reach the apartments, the low-income housing, anything like that makes sense. And also to run from the high school. There's part of the routes. We've planned all these different routes. We're still settling on the exact route, but we do have a lot of them. And so the high school is one of the key places because, of course, teenagers don't have cars.
Louise, got a question?
Yes, Karen, when you say it'll run all day long, are you talking like, 8 to 4, 9 to 5? Well, 6 a.m. to 10 p.m.? What's the basic schedule?
The write-up that we have now is 15 hours a day, 7 days a week. But of course, that could be tweaked. And I think, and our commission thinks, that it makes sense in the beginning to do a shorter run. And we're still kind of torn between a weekend, which would emphasize shopping, businesses like that, and a weekday where you might get more employees going to some of the employers in town, as well as more of the people going to medical facilities. So we haven't really settled, but it would be as a trial run. It would not be every day. We want to try out something for at least maybe 6 months to see if anybody rides this thing.
Karen, in your financial model you laid out a little bit, it sounds like it's supported through fares and advertising. Is there any town funded support to kind of have this be sustainable?
Well, there was some thought for a while of asking the town council for money to buy the bus. But then we kind of looked at the budgets and said, that probably is not going to happen. So that might happen through a grant. There's several grants out there that we qualify under. Whether we get the grant or not is, it's a very competitive situation. But on the other hand, public transportation is getting a lot more attention than it has in the past. So that's part of it. But the advertising might bring in a lot too. It's kind of hard to say. I mean, when they were talking about that, they were envisioning things like, electronic signs in the front of the bus advertising some kind of grocery store that's coming up at the next stop. Stop here for the Costco or whatever. But yeah, we're hoping for grants as well, and the only thing that you could really call town expense would be anything that extra that has to be done if we use the bus drivers who drive the vans for the senior center, the dial-a-ride type vans, because I'm sure that there would be a little bit of extra work in whatever financial work is necessary to take out their Social Security and that sort of thing. That's the only thing we can think of that might be called a town expense. Unless you want to give us the trolley aid, Andy. That would be great. Sorry.
I can't hear you. I'm sorry, you're breaking up.
Oh, really?
Yeah, a little bit.
Scott,
Oh,
did you have a
well.
question?
Yeah. Hey, Karen. You envision going through like a couple bigger roads, larger roads in each neighborhood, or like how many stops? Like you have to walk a ways in your neighborhood to get to the bus stop, or
Our ideal plan would be a half a mile would be the maximum from in a neighborhood. But obviously the bus would be on a major road like Oakland Road, for instance, which is one area that we want to go into, because even though the Walgreens Plaza with the IHOP, that's in Manchester, but it's so close and it's to the town line, and it's such a desirable destination. Plus, there's various routes that connect it to the low-income housing. What is it? What's the housing that's off Avery? You know the one I'm referring to?
White Oaks.
White Oak?
off Avery Street is
Avery is Flax Hill.
Flax Hill.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, there's areas there where there definitely are people that could use public
one
transport.
more, Bill.
Oh, go ahead.
If I took the bus to go shopping at Geisler's, would we have enough buses like to come pick me up again in 45 minutes or something like that? I think it's gonna work.
The full
If
route.
you take a ride down, you got to get a ride back.
Right. It's a circuit. It's a circuit, and the idea is to complete the circuit in about an hour. So the bus would be back better. But all this is kind of still in the planning
Up in the
stage.
air.
Although we did drive, each of us on the commission had routes that we were working on, and we drove each route and tweaked them so that they would be an hour round trip. Now there might be some need for one neighborhood that's needs it more than others. All these routes include the senior center and the high school. And one of the reasons we did that is because Andrea at the senior center, she said that there are people that have difficulty getting to the food bank because they don't have cars. And there's no way,
There you go.
they just can't get there. So there's a resource that they're not able to use that the town wants to offer them. But yeah, it's about an hour. We think we can make that work.
Thanks.
Um,
This is Sue Burnham. maybe I missed this, but did you go over what the cost was?
The cost, the total cost, okay. Now, granted, this is a couple of years old. So keep that in mind. But when they figured out the cost, the total cost was $343,000 a year.
And how much do we charge the riders a fare?
That would be determined by how much grant money we get for the operation. Now, there's a similar bus service in Enfield, which is totally funded by grants. So it doesn't have any fares, it doesn't have any advertising, no sponsorships.
Okay.
That is a much more extensive service. And I think they rent the buses, so that actually adds to the cost. And there was the feeling that we want people to pay a fare just because it's a certain investment in the service, but it would be a low fare. Now, what's a low fare? I know we've done some research on other bus services, and they range all the way from $1 to $8 a trip. So, depends on what part of the state you're in. Believe it or not, some of these services are down in Fairfield County, and they're not cheap, but they're popular. But there's only a couple.
Bill, did you have a question?
Yeah, Karen, could you run these the routes by companies like Datco or, like you said, Lindsay Limousine or maybe Coast Road Stages, and see if they think it's profitable, and maybe they just take the whole thing on themselves, and we didn't have to have the town involved?
Yes, we are doing that now. Now that we have the routes, we've been approaching a couple of these places gradually, but we're also at the same time trying to get the grants. So we want to have some sense of whether this is really as viable as it sounds. I mean, I frankly was quite surprised that even though the surveys that we put out and the meetings that we held were all kind of driven by people who would be interested in it, still a 50% interest in using a bus is a pretty high return for a survey like this, and we're hoping that as an initial thing, we can do a business survey that's town-wide that covers every single business, and also one for residents. And we've discovered that SurveyMonkey is not very expensive, so we're trying to figure out a way to pay for that. I think it's like $75 to do one, but we don't even have $75, so we still have to figure out how to pay for it. Maybe we'll just chip in a little. I don't think that's allowed, though.
Karen, I'll get one. Victor, go ahead, and then I'll ask her. Go ahead, Victor.
Thank you. This is Victor Dorbanzo here. I have a question, Karen.
Mm-hmm.
I know that you mentioned retirement homes, but I also know that they have scheduled times a week. They have scheduled bus trips to the supermarket, to the banks, to errands, to the mall, and so on, etc. So I assume probably they would need this service at some point, but it's not. They wouldn't be dependent on it. Who else besides retirement homes and students you think would use this service?
Well, first of all, for the retirement homes, it's actually the employees that would be using the service. That's what the directors of the retirement homes said, was that they want local people as employees because they think that they would stay. And
so they think that local people would work in those retirement homes if they had the service.
Yes, they did. They have very few people. Well, this was like 2 years ago when I talked to them, and they at the time did not have very many employees who were actually from South Windsor. And just, I don't know if this is industry scuttlebutt or what, but there was a feeling that there would be a lower turnover in employees if they were from the town of South Windsor. whether that's really true or not, it's impossible to know, but that's what they thought.
So you think that those that live in South Windsor work in other towns because there's no service in town here?
Yeah, what happens with the assisted living facilities is that most of their employees come from Hartford, Windsor, Bloomfield, even Enfield.
Correct.
Because they can get a connection on the bus that runs, well, the CT Transit runs by most of the assisted living facilities,
Right.
but nothing runs from the neighborhoods in town into that area along Buckland Road, for instance.
I guess my point is that I think that people that work in those facilities come from Hartford, Bloomfield, Enfield, etc., because they can't find a job there. While people that would work a job like this in South Windsor, if they have a job like this in a different town, it means that as of now they drive there. They could
Right.
as well drive to White Oaks, which is a lot closer if they wanted a job in South Windsor. That I guess that's my point. I just think that we don't have those people that are willing to work those jobs in town, because if they are willing to work those jobs, they probably already do in town, and if not, they'd rather work it in town than in other towns which are further away and they don't have a bus there either.
Yeah, but if they do not have a car because they work in a low-income job, then those jobs are closed off to them.
Correct.
All of them, actually.
Yeah, all of them. That's the point. They wouldn't be able to work anywhere. So
Right, yeah. So it's a job,
Yeah.
it's a job driver too.
yeah, no, I understand.
So I take it, this is an issue that hasn't come up in discussions with developers or,
We get, so like, I'll give you an example. What I see, because I live over near Aldi's, and what happens is the bus stops at the corner of Commerce Way and Rye Street.
Mhm.
They have to walk from there. And unfortunately, when they built Aldi's, they didn't put any sidewalks in, so they all have to walk on the street. You know, ideally, what would be nice is if we could somehow have a central location where the bus would come, and then have one of these buses waiting, and you know who's coming on this bus, and you could have certain businesses that you could bring these people to their businesses, you know, like Aldi's or something like that, where they could be brought to work. Because I don't know how many of them get to work on time. I don't know how many of them are, late because they have to walk so far from Commerce to the front door of Aldi's.
Right. We actually had one business owner that we interviewed. I wish I could remember which one it was now, who said that he often picked up people who worked at other businesses along Sullivan Avenue who were walking in the snow, and he felt sorry for them. So he drove them to their businesses along South Sullivan Avenue. But he had a small company. He didn't think that his employees were that impacted by it. But he saw this all the time in the winter, which was when it's noticeable, is when somebody's trudging through the snow for 2 miles trying to get to the place where they work because there's no bus. And this was a frequent thing. But it's anecdotal. And FedEx, for instance, said that they didn't think that their employees would use it because their schedule is not a normal work schedule. So any bus would not be able to service FedEx, but that's not true of other industries. So they're not the only people on these routes along the commercial and business districts in town. So it's a combination of our own residents being able to use the service and people who would work in South Windsor being able to use it.
Linda? Unmute yourself.
Okay. So Karen, one of the things you had talked about is a route going by potentially the high school, right?
Mhm.
So going through the businesses and you know, I'm thinking that there, you know, are a number of kids that do work. And, you know, I mean, I know when I was a teenager and I didn't have my license and I didn't have a car and I lived in East Hartford, but I used to take the bus from my high school to Dunkin' Donuts to work almost every day. So, I mean, it might be because there is no bus that is anywhere near there to get kids. So it might be something that's, you know, would be good for those kids if it is going by the high school. So that's just my comment.
Yeah, that's going to be a stop no matter what route
Okay.
we decide on. And another thing that we found out when we talked to the teenagers was that the kids that come from Project Concern or whatever it is that they call that now, which brings in students from Hartford, they cannot stay for after school curriculum for sports or for any kind of after school extracurricular activity because they have to take the school bus back to Hartford. That's the only way they can get back to Hartford. But if there was a bus that connected them to CT Transit, they could stay for all that stuff that everybody else gets to take advantage of, which is, you know, kind of a sad thing. So it's got that little benefit as well.
I mean, something that I was saying, I know a while back, and I don't know if anybody else said, I know a while back when Matt was here, he had said something about talking to Connecticut Transit about putting a bus on Sullivan Avenue, you know, trying to get, you know, those businesses, you know, trying to get a bus, because the bus right now, it goes, I think it goes up Route 5 or it goes up Main Street, and then it goes like Commerce Way, and then swings around, comes back out on the Rye Street, and then heads back down Route 5 or even Main Street. I'm not 100% sure. But there was always talk about that because you have all these businesses out on Sullivan Avenue. I mean, I think that would be a good starting point is to try to see if Connecticut Transit can maybe change their routes a little bit or maybe add a nice route from Buckland through on Buckland Road down onto Sullivan Avenue would be ideal and have it go down to, you know, down to Route 5 from there and then, you know, or something like that. But I don't know if they would do that. But have you talked to Connecticut Transit to see if they have any ideas about other routes?
Yes, we have a lot. And it's not going to happen. They did talk about that. But because the ridership in South Windsor is fairly low, their discussions are leaning more towards eliminating some of the streets that are on the route. So they are aware that we would like to have something down Sullivan Avenue and that there are all these new businesses down there, but they're just not interested in doing that kind of thing right now. The one thing that they did do, and they have this like 10-year plan that they give presentations on about once a year. And one thing they did, just because we are trying to push public transit in general in town, they developed a little side route from Buckland Mall into sort of brushing the area around Evergreen Walk and extending that little jog there, but it doesn't really help the town. It just helps people go from Hartford to Evergreen Walk a little bit more easily. I mean, there are some stops there already, so it's not that big a deal for them to do a little extra loop, but that's the only concession they've made. So I don't think they're gonna do this. Their budget's too tight. Yeah.
So Karen, what would you like to see from the commission? Would you like us to, what actually are you looking for from us?
Well, I was mostly looking to see if you've heard anything from developers about whether this is a concern, whether it just never comes up, whether businesses think that it's a benefit for them to have public transit stops near them. You know, it's very hard for us to gauge this without talking to every single business in town. And we have talked to a lot of them, but certainly, and they keep adding new businesses. We're behind.
Any commissioners have any additional questions? Scott, oh, not Scott, excuse me, Robert?
Thanks. Karen, I'm assuming this is one bus or trolley that you're referring to as opposed to multiple buses?
Two.
Two buses, okay.
Has to be two. It doesn't work with only one.
And you said the loop was about an hour in terms of the path that you guys were considering, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. In my head, I'm kind of struggling seeing a strong enough market for this. But in that scenario, you know, I'm just going back to like when you're at the University of Connecticut, they have bus lines and the bus is there every 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And every hour, you know, the market kind of diminishes a little bit. It's not, you know, well, I can take the bus and go to Walgreens and get my prescription and get back on the bus. It's you have kind of an hour of time before you're getting picked up again. And I see that as kind of being a little bit of a limiting factor in this situation. I'm also kind of curious, you mentioned Enfield being a town that is doing something like this, what the feedback from that town has been, if that's been successful implementing it in that town.
It has been successful. It's actually been around for over 5 years. But Enfield is a very different kind of town. And they were able to get grants to run it mostly because of Thompsonville, where there's a really large low-income population that gets served by buses. But it doesn't just go into Thompsonville, it goes out into some of the areas near the Enfield Mall. But there are a lot of things that affect the Enfield system that just would not apply to South Windsor, like the prison, things like that, you know, that qualify them for all kinds of grants. So, yeah. And we know that an hour loop is not that great, but on the other hand, it's not really that different than CT Transit, you know. We might be able to get it a little faster. There's a couple that are 45 minutes, some of the routes, but again, you know, we're still working on that part, but it's not realistic to have it like every 10 minutes. The money's just not going to be there for something like that, unfortunately.
Scott?
Hey, Karen, if you have two buses as an hour loop, wouldn't you want to be stopping by Geisler's every half hour? Same route or two different routes?
Maybe.
If you're running two buses at the same time, right?
Would think so. Yeah, you would think
So to me, that means you're stopping at, you know, if they stagger them perfectly, you're stopping every half hour, give or take, right?
Yeah.
Do you know, does Enfield charge for a bus ride or is it always free? You know?
I think they charge $1, but that's from way back, so I don't know if it's still $1. Yeah. Again, go ahead.
This intrigues me because I do have some employees that take the bus and it is very limited for Connecticut Transit. No question. I have to go, or one of the guys has to go pick them up at the bus stop. Otherwise, it's a long walk to work, you know?
Yeah.
But I do see your theory where this fills in the blanks, you know?
Yeah.
Because they've been pretty limited service. I mean, Main Street, over to Commerce, and then the loop, you know, down Chapel
Are you on
Road, Ellington Road, back out to. Yeah. You can hear me?
No.
All right.
You're breaking up.
Well,
what's your business?
I'm a contractor. I build things.
Okay,
stuff.
but is it?
But I do have high school. I do have high school kids.
Oh my gosh.
That work part time after school. It's kind of limited for some things, but I'd have to ask them to see if this is something that they would do, you know what I mean? Because sometimes they have a ride, sometimes they don't, you know?
Yeah. Well, the teenagers that we met with were very excited about the idea of, a bus, believe it or not, because it's different than a school bus. And we took them for a ride. That's one of the things we do when we meet with groups is we actually get them on the bus and take them down to Buckland Mall or something like that, and then go back. And so
Yeah, 'cause one of my biggest thoughts is the turnaround time, because to go pick up a prescription and have to wait an hour for a ride back home, that's a long time, you know? Half
Yeah.
hour, not too bad. Sometimes it might take a half hour to get out of CVS anyway, you know?
yeah,
So,
Always.
yeah.
well, we just keep asking
Thanks.
ourselves the question: is this really something that the town needs? And so far, it seems they do, but we have to get down to, I think, more scientific surveys as part of the next step.
Um,
Go ahead.
I'm thinking that maybe if you come up with some kind of, maybe a drawing of the routes that you guys think would be, because you're saying like this route could be in this neighborhood, this route could be in this neighborhood. Maybe coming up with a drawing that says, okay, these are the primary routes that we're looking for. We're looking for a route to go down these roads. We're looking for a route to go down these roads, just to kind of see, because then that gives us more of a something that we can wrap ourselves around and say, you know what, that would be a good route, because then we might be able to, let's say, example, we might be able to pull into a company like Coca-Cola or Home Depot down there that has employees, and the other buildings where, like, for instance, where the Amazon is going and things like that. So to be other buildings, maybe having it where a city bus comes, and comes into like either a commuter lot or something like that, having a bus there waiting that would then take these people to these, certain parts of town, or having a central point that people could drive to, park their car, get on this shuttle to go shopping somewhere and not have to take their car with them. Just a thought.
We do have several maps of the trial run, which concentrates on the Sullivan Avenue Business District and expands out to places like the Senior Center. I could send you those with a little bit of explanation. They're still very much in flux, and also they're very, very modest, because again, it's a trial, and we have no idea if anybody's going to use this, and there's only so much money you can sink into things like this. If they fail, you don't want them to fail. So I will send you those.
Okay.
I think there's 5. There might be 4 now.
And then
used to be 8.
And then what I'll do is once you send it to me, I'll forward it on to Donna, and then I'll have her in turn send it out to the commissioners so that they can review it and kind of see, so that we all can have our own little conversation about what we think might work. And then we can have you back to another meeting to talk to you a little bit about what we talked about, to see if we can all kind of form some kind of partnership to make it work for you, and will also work for us on our end too.
Yeah, I don't think we should be, as a commission, should be just doing this by ourselves, although it certainly is within our charge. But having something like the Economic Development Commission to give us some input, because you have talked to, hundreds of business people, and you have more of a sense of what's going on. And we also have a breakdown of different kinds of populations in town as sort of an overlay to some of these maps. So they're kind of hard to interpret in some ways, but I think I can clean them up. So for instance, we have a breakdown in town for where the neighborhoods are with the most people who do not own cars, and where the neighborhoods are with the most people who are under the age of 18, things like that. And that helps us figure out whether the routes that we've been drawing up make the most sense, or whether we need to adjust them to reach more of the neighborhoods that need the public transportation. So we've done a lot of work with trying to define the areas of town that would benefit the most from that. But I will send you the route maps, and I'll send you some of these other maps too, the breakdowns of town population groups, which might help or it might confuse you because they can be hard to figure out.
Did you have a question?
I'm sorry.
I wanted just to add, Karen, you may want to look into the following as well. I think that this is a great idea and it's very welcomed. I rode the bus all my childhood. I lived overseas, and bus was a daily thing that I did, riding a bus. But I do think that in a place like South Windsor, most of your clients would be people that actually do not live in South Windsor. So you may want to interview businesses like Scott Kelly and people that have employees in town that come from out of town, because those would be the ones that most are going to use this service. I don't know of many families that don't own cars in South Windsor. Maybe they're registered in Florida, but I think that most people that live in our town.
There are people.
I know there are, but I'm saying most of the residents here.
Oh, sure.
I doubt most of them would use a service like this, but it could be very beneficial for businesses indeed. I can definitely see that, and that's it. Good luck.
Thank you.
Any additional questions for Karen? Not seeing any. Well, thank you, Karen, for coming to our meeting tonight. I'll look forward to receiving those maps and stuff, and then I will in turn forward them on to the commissioners so that we can review them at one of our meetings and kind of see, maybe brainstorm a little bit, and then we'll have you back at a future meeting and we can go over some of our findings. And in the meantime, we can also talk to Matt and also to Michael to see what they get their feeling on it too. Andy, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I just, it's nice to hear that you guys kind of think it's a good idea.
Gotcha. All right, Karen, thank you for coming to our meeting.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Karen.
Thanks for giving me a hearing here. Bye.
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 Okay, the next thing on our agenda is approval of minutes. Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes? And the only thing I had was I found they spelled my name wrong, but that was okay. Under old business, 4B, I just figured out the N and burn them. That's all. That's all I noticed. So, does anyone have anything? Sue?
Yeah, on page 3, number 7, economic development opportunities and updates.
Yeah.
Go all the way to the bottom and then go up 3 lines. And you asked, Paul, if there's any interest in the Simon property. Where is that?
So the Simon property is the property behind Joanne Fabric. That abuts, that it goes, that is the land that's like across Pleasant Hills and Smith Street.
Thank you. The second question I have is on page 5. Also, Paul, this is directed at you. You had suggested maybe bringing Karen Johnson back, Karen from Charter Realty and Development.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, I did talk to Scott about that. They're not at a point yet. They're still negotiating, which I'll talk more about that during the during my part. But does anyone else have anything, corrections, deletions? If not, I'll call for a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? Okay. Number 5, old business, Mayor TV. Scott couldn't be with us tonight, so because he has to run another meeting. So he wanted me to inform the commission that the plan is to have launch hopefully the Mayor TV next month. They just have to come into town, do a few more pictures, and then they'll be ready to launch it. So I'm hoping by our May meeting that we'll be able to give the commission a sneak preview of what the new video is going to look like. Under 5B, follow-up second tax agreements. One thing that was brought up to me before the meeting, Jim Murray had mentioned it to me, was, I think people wanted to kind of see, how each abatement works, like how, for instance, like if we gave an abatement to Coca-Cola, how does that work? What are we receiving during that abatement process? Because I think a lot of people in town don't realize when we give an abatement, sometimes some of the benefits to it is the personal property, because we could be getting, we could be getting a good chunk of money with the personal property, even though we gave their building, an abatement. So, I've mentioned that we could definitely see if maybe I could get Mary to come up with Mary in the assessor's office, come up with maybe a list or a spreadsheet of what, each business that we give the abatements to, what the breakout is. So how much we're getting in personal property, how much we're getting in real estate with the abatement, how much we're going to get in real estate after the abatement, and then be able to get copies of it out to all the members, so you guys can all kind of see what the what each one is. So if someone says to you, why did we give this company an abatement? Why is it costing us a lot of money? You could actually say to them, well, here, let me show you the breakout. So I did like that idea that Jim brought up, and I'm going to work on that and bring it forth to the commission so you guys can get a better feel of it. Start with Linda, and then we'll go to Sue.
So, Paul, I know we've talked extensively about tax abatements, and I thought one of the things as we were going through this whole process and talking about the abatement, we give the abatements, you have the personal property, the land, and, yeah, we're giving it on the building, but we're not giving it on the personal property. And I thought a lot of that stuff we were talking about putting some of that information out on the assessor's website, or we were talking about having a separate piece for those tax abatements so that somebody could go out and you can see it in black and white. Because I think one of the things I know I've brought up so many times is that I didn't feel like tax abatements were being given like uniformly. It felt like, oh, this person's getting this and this person's getting that. And we talked about that they have to put there's a form, and there's going to be a bunch of questions on the form. And, so I thought that Mike Maniscalco was working through that with Scott Roberts as well. So, but great question, Jim. But it leads me to, I don't know whether this is an appropriate time, because it leads me into Carlos Pasta. All of the stuff, I realize that they're, going through the bankruptcy, so forth and so on. But one of my biggest concerns about granting somebody a tax abatement is we find out that they have been not compliant with OSHA regulations. I have a big problem with the fact that we're giving a tax abatement and they're not up to OSHA standards. They're being fined by OSHA. Something I just wanted to bring up. I think that we should think about that. I don't know how, we monitor that per se, but it kind of bothers me a little, being, with, the safety of employees, but the town is saying, okay, you can have a tax abatement, but if you're not up to code, so that's just something that's been bothering me for a while, and I thought I would bring it up to our commission, because we do do the tax abatements.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely, next month, if, when Michael's on, we can definitely talk about it more with him. I know one question that I had for Scott tonight, we were talking earlier, was now that Carlos Pasta is been bought out by another company, by, Tribe 19, which is a company based out of Wisconsin, how does that affect the tax abatement that we had given them for their addition they put on? Does it, because they had also applied, they also had done the Chapter 11. So how does that affect it? And like Scott said, they're having to look into that because they have to kind of see on the, if the Chapter 11 covers the real property, which is the building, but then they're buying it, what would happen with that?
So what I can tell you, because I did talk to the assessor's office, since they owe back taxes, once that happened, they no longer have a tax abatement.
Really?
That's what I was told from the assessor's office. Because that was a question I had as well, is what happens to that tax abatement? And I agree with that. I mean, if you're not paying your taxes, you should no longer have the benefit of a tax abatement.
So I'm wondering if maybe we should try to see if I can get Mary into our next meeting to talk a little bit about that, because it sounds like there's a lot of stuff there we may not know about.
Yeah, well, and like I said, I called the assessor's office because I had a couple of questions about that, because I mean, this stuff is all online. So I was looking at the field cards and I wanted to find out, because I mean, the paper, obviously, I think we all read it. I have the paper here somewhere, but that, you know, they owed over $300,000 in back taxes. So I don't know what the deal is. We can ask, you know, I mean, when this new company comes in, I mean, I'm hoping that part of it is that they pay up on those back taxes, but we don't know. And I don't know if the town council knows anything. Don't want to put you on the spot, Andy, but I don't know if it's just a deal that Mike Maniscalco makes with the new buyers or what.
Nope, you put a lien on the property. They owe those back taxes have to be paid first.
Okay. So that's what,
Okay.
So I'm sorry, Sue. So that was why I asked those, you know, wanted to find out from the assessor's office. And that's what they told me, is that because they reneged on the taxes, they no longer have a tax abatement. So.
Right. So we'll have to see more about what happens to that. Go ahead, Sue.
Oh, this is great. This is perfect. And thank you, Linda. Just is a great lead into my question. I've been posed by several people in town the question, if you grant a tax abatement to a company or a business and they go out of business or something happens to them within, before the tax abatement period is over, do they pay it back? Do they still owe that to the town?
Yes, that's written.
Huh?
Sorry, that's written into every contract.
Yep.
I
They
understand
pay
that.
back to day one.
Thank you, Andy. But I understand it, but I think that needs to be posted somewhere that, because there's people that are questioning it, and I think what's generating the question is the Carlos Pasta thing. So, I don't know if it would come from us or whatever, just to cover the fact that, you know, XYZ business has a tax abatement, and if something happens during that tax abatement time, it still has to be paid.
Andy, go ahead.
All great questions. I would suggest that you kind of hit on this, but as part of the economic development website on the town of South Windsor website, you should have a page that explains all about tax abatements. And
Well,
we
which
can
is coming.
Right, and we can direct people to that one spot all the time. Now, to go back to some earlier issues, I think it's important to understand we're guided by state statute in terms of tax abatements.
Mhm.
So all those tax abatements, it has to be based on the number of dollars being invested, the number of employees that are going to be hired. So it's not a question of, well, this one, we like this company, so we'll give them 7 years, and we don't like this one, we'll give them 5 years. It's a strict formula. So
Okay.
I think if all that information is on the website, people will get a better understanding of it.
I
Thanks.
totally
Great
understand.
questions, though.
Yeah,
Long overdue. Thank you.
absolutely.
Yeah, the which I don't really have on here. I did talk to Scott tonight about that too. That they are working on, town is working on he is working with a vendor or two on a new website for EDC. And it's going to be, and it's going to be a lot of new stuff. And he's going to bring that, he hopes to have a I can't even say the word. But he's hoping to have a temporary website up for you guys to review at next month's meeting. And then you'll be able to see what it is. He says it's got some really nice perks to it that he thinks will be attractive to the business community. But he really couldn't tell me much on it because that's what he was going to talk about tonight. But next month, I think we'll be very happy with what he's going to present to us. So look forward to it.
Good stuff.
Committee reports. I have nothing under committee reports. Does anyone have any new business they want to bring before the commission? Linda?
I have a question, Paul, and I don't know if it's appropriate under new business or not. Is there any thought to us going back having in-person meetings again?
That is, we can talk about that now. I was going to talk about that in general discussion, but we can talk about that now since you brought it up. So, and Andy can back me up on this one. May 19th, Town Hall is going to be officially open. And we can have, if what I wanted to get from the commissioners tonight was kind of a consensus, would you be interested in having an in-person meeting for our May meeting? It would be in the council chambers, and it would be on their Scott told me that they've ordered plexiglass. They're going to be putting the plexiglass in so that we'd all be separated, and it would, they just have to know. And then I guess it would be like a greeter. So like if there anybody from the public wanted to come into the meeting to talk, they would be scanned. And I think they said their temperature would be taken and their name would be for contact tracing. And then they would wait out in the hall, and then when they're, or else they would come in. Where would they come in? I think there would be area. Can you, I remember a small thing on that, Andy. Can you help me on this a little bit?
They would come in through the main lobby, and then they would be checked out in the main lobby. They have to be asked some questions about COVID-19. Their temperature has to be taken. Then they can be admitted to the council chambers, and there'll be a limit on the number of people because of the social distancing. So I want to just make sure you understand, even though the town hall is going to be open, it is open for people, residents, to come in and conduct business in various offices. But the downstairs or other meeting rooms will not be open. So
No.
Any meetings in person will be in the council chambers.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because I guess that's the only room right now that is able to do the live meeting like we're doing right now, and they haven't got to that down to do those yet. So, Louise.
Yeah, like I asked you earlier, if I have to bring my vaccination card to this, will the public have, when they're coming in, will they have to show a card that they've been vaccinated? And,
Right now, it's wearing a mask, being screened, taking your temperature. It's not the plan is not to ask about vaccinations.
Okay.
Mindy, did you have a question? No? Okay. So if I can get kind of consensus, if you're in favor of it, raise your hand. Okay. So it looks like everybody's in favor of an in-person meeting. So, I guess I'll try to reach out to the members that aren't here tonight to kind of get their feeling on it too. Because, like Scott had said to me, they can do the virtual and the in-person. They just have to make sure they have enough people because it requires a few more. Right now, like something like this requires, 1 or 2 people, where an in-person is going to require a little more, especially if there's some people that want to participate but don't want to be in person. So we're going to have to work on that and try to see, how that would work out, and if we'd be able to make that happen. But Scott felt he could we could definitely do our May meeting in the council chambers. Go ahead, Linda.
Point of clarification, Paul. So even if we're all, I mean, because we've never done this in the past, so even if we're all in council chambers and somebody has a question, they can dial into it? Is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying is if there is a member, if one of our commissioners does
Okay,
not feel
gotcha.
comfortable about being there, they could, Scott was saying something about he'd have a couple of laptops in the room.
Okay.
And he could have that person on a laptop so they could still participate in the meeting, you know, and they would still be seen. If you watched it on TV, you'd still see them, but they would be as a, you know, from the TV like we are now.
Yeah,
So,
I just needed the clarification that you said member.
member, yes. Not sure. I mean, the public, from what I, you know, from what I remember initially when I read in the paper there, when they were talking about it, you know, before when they talked to the council about the initial process, I remember reading, they were saying something about that, you know, some people could be in the chamber, but then if a lot of people came and wanted to speak, they'd stay out in the hall. Once they spoke, then they'd have to leave, so that you didn't have too many people in the building
Right.
at one time. That makes sense, Andy?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
In that case, would they be showing it on the screen out in the lobby so these people can know what's being said and what's going on?
Yeah, this would be, once we go back to in-person meetings, this will be handled just like we did before, in the lobby, on the town website. People will not be able to call in, but they could still email in with comments.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Cool. Well, that took care of that issue, so that's good. That's one less thing I need to talk about. Anybody else have anything under new business? So under economic development opportunities updates, Matt's not on with us tonight. Scott couldn't be there and Michael couldn't be here. Couple things that I have, I'm gonna bring them under. So today I was over at near Home Depot, and I was at one of the businesses over there, and I watched the trains going into Home Depot to pick up cars, to drop cars off, blocking the intersection continuously, you know, and I mean, blocking it for probably a good 10 minutes, and then they move it, and then they go off and they grab some cars, and then they come back, they block it again. They blocked it probably, I don't know, I was there for probably a half hour to 45 minutes. They probably blocked the intersection probably 5 or 6 times. And I mean, maybe it was a few less, I don't know. It felt like it was like 4 or 5. But I know that he was telling me that I guess a few weeks ago, there was a group of people that had a meeting right next to his building. And he said it looked like it was a combination of people from the town, people from the state, people from the police department, people from possibly the train people. I'm not sure. Andy, do you know anything about that meeting at all?
Not about that specific meeting, but I know there are plans to redo many of those railroad crossings, so they could just have been there for inspection of the railroad crossing.
Okay. Have you heard anything regarding, I've heard a lot of complaints from a lot of different people in town. Have you heard anything from people in town complaining about that intersection being blocked with the train?
You know, I have not at this point. Maybe Mike has, or Scott.
Okay. I had a suggestion. I was talking to somebody today, and we made a suggestion of maybe of seeing if we could either work with the state or with the town, you know, and maybe put up a sign, because it sounds like it's only between 11 and 1 is usually when the majority of the trains go through there to load up and go out. If we somehow could put a sign on Ellington Road before Chapel that says between the hours 11 to 1, Chapel Road will be frequently closed due to railroad crossing or something, and then encourage the people to find alternate routes. Because my friend was telling me that one day the cars were all the way down to like Chapel Hill condominiums, and they were waiting to go. And I mean, probably Mindy, you might even be able to. Mute yourself.
Okay, couldn't unmute. Oh, yeah, I have thoughts. I personally haven't had the train experience. Maybe I just don't drive down that way during those hours. I would actually be surprised if that were the case because so many trucks come up down Chapel Road. It seems like that would be a deterrent for trucks, but it's not. So with all the trucks coming up and down, coming off 291 or heading down that way, I can't. If there's a lot of train blockage, it doesn't seem to be blocking them. I wish it would. I wish it would discourage them.
My office is on Chapel Road, and I've been numerous times stuck at that train stop exactly at noon. There's a train that passes exactly at 12 noon, and you can get stuck for 10 minutes. The frustrating part is that the train stops and does not move. It's not that it's slow. It just stops. I don't know what for.
Well,
couldn't figure that out, but it does not move.
They have to manually go out and hit those switches that are out there so they can switch it to one track, to the other track, to the third track. So that's why they end up stopping in the middle of the intersection, because they have to get past the switch to switch it, and then they can back up.
Then they need to move the switch further up the road and stop there.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So,
yeah, because it's unacceptable. I had to, after the third or fourth time after waiting way over 5 minutes, I just turned around and went around it. It didn't make any sense, but yeah, it's too long of a stop, and nobody seems to know when it's going to happen or at what time.
Yeah, my friend told me, he said, because his business is literally, you can see his business from the railroad track. And he says it's mostly between 11 and 1 is where the majority of the trains come through. But his concern is more on Route 5, because what happens is when those lights are blinking and the train is going through there, the Route 5, they have the continuous green. But anybody that wants to make a left turn, either to go left turn towards Chapel or left turn towards Chapel going towards Maine, they can't while the train is sitting there. And he's concerned that somebody's going to try to turn because they're not going to wait anymore. And he's concerned somebody's going to get whacked when they try to turn to go down Chapel Road towards Main Street.
Correct. Although that's a lesser concern, because once you're on Route 5, you can always go around. If you realize this is happening, you can go around and go to another street. If you're stuck on Chapel, you're stuck. There's nowhere to go. You can't even turn around because so many cars are being backed up.
Yeah. So, I was going to bring that, I was going to bring up to Mike to see if that's the sign, either one out there and maybe even one on Route 5 to say during these times, look for an alternate route or, do access it. You feel bad because now you're sending them down to either Pleasant Valley, which is residential mostly, or, or they go, if they're coming the other way, they can go Ellington Road, which will bring you around too, but it's, you don't.
I think the solution actually is not that. I honestly think that the solution is that they either do that switch electronically or remotely or something, or they do it up the track where they don't need to block everybody for tens of cars to wait for somebody to actually manually switch something and then walk all the way back. So they can find the better solution for that.
Right, because I think it does. I think for an economic development purpose, I feel it does affect the businesses on that street.
Yeah.
So, so that's one thing I had. We already talked about Carlos Pasta. It's been sold to this other company, Tribe 19, which is out of Wisconsin. Let's see, anything else? Oh, so last month I had a meeting. I was approached by a realtor who sent a person over to me. There's a gentleman looking at the All Phase building on Route 5 and Sullivan Avenue. And he's looking to do is bring in a book recycling company. And right now he's out of Summers, and he's looking to have a I guess you'd call like a retail slash showroom type thing where you could come in there and buy books. And because he goes through so many, he gets books in by the truckload. But some of the books that get in are decent books. They're not like ruined or anything. And that's what he does now. He's in the process of opening that up in Summers now. So he's hoping to, he's working with the owner of the building right now, which is taking a little longer because there's a lot of issues with the building. Building's been sitting idle for like 6 years. So there's a lot of cosmetic, a lot of stuff on the building needs to be redone or fixed. So he's working on that. And we're hoping that, you know, in the next few months, I'll have maybe more information about when he might be moving in. So I was happy to hear that because that's a building that, to me, when you come into South Windsor, that's one of the buildings you see when you come in, and it's nice to see that we're going to have an actual company in that building instead of a vacant building. And then the other thing is unclaimed. The freight, is it unclaimed freight? What's it? The freight plate, the furniture store down the street on the corner of Strong and Route 5 is going to be closing up. And that space is going to be available. So if anybody knows a business that might be looking for, sounds like it's about 25,000 square feet. And it also has a warehouse space in the back or with a door and stuff. So if anyone knows anyone that may be looking for space, let me know. You know, because we're see if we can try to fill that space too. That's pretty much all I have. Does anyone have anything under general discussion? Andy?
Hey, Paul, I just want to add to that because it's an issue that we've been wrestling with in town for a long time. And that is buildings like that where a company moves out and we've got this unclaimed building, forget about unclaimed freight, unclaimed building. I think the Economic Development Commission ought to think about developing a policy where we could offer tax abatements to companies that come in and use an old building as opposed to building a new building somewhere.
Well, I think they can. I think we've done that with some buildings in town, haven't we?
We have, but it's based on the amount of dollars they're spending. So if they don't meet a certain threshold, they're not getting any help at all. And I just think there's some way we should be offering additional incentives for people to come in and use vacant buildings as opposed to looking for an empty lot somewhere to build another building.
Yeah, I mean,
So
I know
for you guys to think about.
I know the one thing that was been brought to my attention, and Matt talked about it at one of our meetings. I don't know, it was last month, the month before, the old Mazik building on Route 5.
Right.
And I guess he was calling that a brownfield building.
Right.
So all I thought of when I heard brownfield was Hygie, the old Hygie building that took many years to go through, you know, and then now look, it's filled with businesses.
Right.
So, you know, I think that is something that maybe the town needs to look at because I feel that's a great space there, you know, and whether they could, and I feel they could utilize that building in some way. And I think another benefit to draw a business there is the, what do you call it? The next door, the, help me with the word I'm trying to think of, the plant, the power, the fuel cell.
Oh, the fuel cells are there.
Fuel cell things that are right there. I mean, it's right there. So if a company went into that building, they might be able to utilize the fuel cells for their power, which in way would benefit, you know, it would benefit the town and benefit the business. So I'm hoping that it's something that we can work on and, you know, not us, but maybe try to get the town to try to work on, see if we can get that building back on the tax rolls again. Anybody else have any general discussion? Yeah, I did see there was an article in the paper. Costco's did break ground over there. You know, and I know that we as a commission have had a huge part in them coming to South Windsor. We did a lot with the, you know, we've had Mark at one of our meetings there. We've also couple years ago, I think Matt had brought that to us initially, you know, and I know as a commission, we've really been working with Matt and with them and to try to have it come to fruition, which it did. So I'm happy as a commission that we were able to get a project like that brought to South Windsor. As for, trying to think what else is over there he told me that's up and running. The Harbor Chase has received their certificate of occupancy. They are now open. What's the other one he told me? Well, all these is open. Chase Bank is open now. I think if I had anything else. Oh, here we go. Windsor Federal, I noticed they had the foundation going in, and when I went by there today, they bury equipment. They've cleared the lot down there. They're in the process of clearing it and getting it all ready so they can go in there and start operating out of it. They've already put up their sign, which is out on Route 5 there. Valvoline, they've started the site work. They've got the equipment down there for the oil change that they're going to be putting in down there. And let's see. And then I noticed that a couple, I watched a little of the meeting last night for REESG NUCO, which is looking for the zone change from general commercial to Sullivan Avenue mixed use. And it's been continued to their May meeting, the public hearing, waiting because they had a lot of discussion last night. You know, and hopefully they'll make a decision on the you know, the zone change. And then once they come in with their, you know, site plan, then they can hopefully address some of the issues that are being brought up by the neighborhood next door of Strawberry Field. I noticed that Esteem Manufacturing, which is a company located on South Satellite Road, got approved for their 5,400 square foot addition. So they're an existing business here in South Windsor that has purchased an adjoining building that was formerly the company that's down next to where down in Route 5 there. What's that?
CAS Equipment.
Thank you. CAS Equipment, former CAS Equipment building. They've expanded over into that building, and they're going to be putting on a nice little addition. And then also a daycare has been approved to go in to the old Bank of America building that is now owned by the Shepherd family out on Route 5 there on the corner of Governors and Route 5. So that'll be a good thing for over there too. And that's pretty much all I have right now. Does anyone have any additional questions? Andy, go ahead.
I just wanted to thank the commission for the letter of support that you sent regarding the Geisler's Plaza redevelopment. I know the developers appreciate it and the town council appreciated it. It was a great letter and showed them that many people in this town are just waiting for that plaza to be redeveloped. So thanks.
You're welcome. Okay, I don't have anything for executive session. If not, I'll call for an adjournment of our meeting.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Yep,
Thanks,
thank you.
guys. See you later.
Bye-bye.
See you next month.
See you next month.